Welcome to Rebel Squadron. The Empire is spreading terror across the galaxy, and we need your help to break its iron grip.
Activate briefing.
So, as you may or may not know, I am a one-man show on my tiny little nobody channel. I gotta do everything myself. So, it's taking some time to get around to certain types of videos, such as top 10s. You'd be surprised at how much work goes into making these videos, especially when you have to do the production and the editing, and you gotta write the scripts and come up with the content ideas. Ooh, doggy, let me tell you, that takes a lot of time and energy. Alright, folks, let's get to it. And here we have our first top 10. So as you can see, I do not have a top 10 for this particular video, and here, let me explain to you why. This game, Galaxy of Heroes, is different than a lot of the mobile games that I played, which is one of the reasons why I'm still playing it 5 years in. I'm not saying that top 10 lists are not useful, they're not valid. Let me explain to you the flaw in some of these top 10 lists. One of the positive aspects of this game is the concept of theory crafting. It is a very useful concept within these types of games, and it's actually pretty vital to keeping the game fresh and keeping it viable for all levels of players. Well, the reason I decided to do this particular video as my first top 10 is because I've had a lot of questions and a lot of experiences regarding squad makeup and resource allocation. So this falls back on my previous noob camp and mod videos. Yeah, I'd like to build upon that with this particular, quote unquote top 10 list. So let me give you an example here as to what I'm talking about. If we go into the journey guide here, we'll go into the Padme Event, and if you click on activity, you'll see here you have a pretty good selection of characters to choose from here. And even within the Separatist tag, you do have 2 to 3 viable choices here. You got your Clankers with your General Grievous lead, you got your Geonosians with your Brood Alpha lead, and then you have your Newt lead, which is very effective, and you can utilize literally any Separatist character with Newt Gunray. So you actually have quite a few options here, and especially if you're at a lower level with your account and your roster, and you're still building everything up, it actually gives you a bit of flexibility there, because General Grievous can be a bit difficult to get the shards for. You have to go into the shard store and buy his shards, and it takes a good amount of time to do that. And then, so that kind of makes it difficult to use a full Clanker squad with this event, because it's going to be easier for you to get some of these Clankers than it is to get that General Grievous. With the Geonosians, it might be a little bit easier to get all of those bugs if you're at a high enough level with your account and you've got all of those nodes unlocked. That's not a bad way to go in and of itself. So the point that I'm trying to make is that you have your obvious squad selections, characters to work towards and to build up. But the beautiful thing about this game is that you can actually mix and match. And that is where the term theory crafting comes from. So even though it's not an obvious choice, say you got your Newt lead with Dooku and maybe like Magna Guard and a B1 when Django thrown in for good measure. You get your bounty hunters, you got your clankers, you got your separatist leadership. Now, me personally, I did not go in with a consolidated squad. I did not go in with a full Geo squad. I did not go in with a full clanker squad. If I remember correctly, I had the Newt lead and various other characters from the separatist tag. And I managed to clear out the Padme event just fine. Might have had some stumbling blocks here and there, but overall, it was not a problem at unlocking a full 7-star Padme for me. And that was without using a full Geo squad or say a full Clanker squad, which is the point that I'm trying to make in this video. So if you're just looking to be more casual about it and you just want the clear, direct route that you don't really have to put too much theory crafting into and whatnot, if you're more of a casual player that you want to do well in the game, but you want to be more casual about it, then you've got the obvious squad selection to shoot for there. For example, the Geo Bugs. But if you like to get more creative with it, if you're looking to take your your Galaxy of Heroes game to a whole nother level, mix and match, theory craft. You find different characters that aren't so obvious together and figure out if they work. That is what, for me at least, makes this game so much fun. It's always fun with that challenge of coming up with new squad configurations. And let me tell you, folks, this is not by accident. This is one of the things that CG has done right with the theory crafting. They have made it possible to take various characters that, in a lot of cases, they don't even have the same tag. This is an example, but they all still have that same Separatist tag. So any Separatist abilities apply to all of them. Now, there are characters that do not have that same tag, and when you throw them together, they still work great together. Yeah, I have to give CG credit for that. And it's just a shame that they are not more focused on that type of gameplay than they are on these whaling cash grab type of gaming mechanics. It sounds like they used to be really focused on the theory crafting within the game, and they seem to have really kind of gone their separate way with it. I have heard that CG has openly stated to the effect that they have created theory crafting characters that people have not fully embraced and utilized. So that just goes to prove that this is not by accident, this is very much by design. So that is something to keep in mind when you're building up your squads and your rosters. Just because you don't have a full squad of a particular tag or of a full squad of a particular group within a tag, such as the Geonosians, you're not out of luck there, folks. You have options. So keep that in mind, especially as a newer player, as you're building up your squads. Use these top 10 lists to give you a compass point, but keep in mind that you do have room to wander along that path and create your own squads that are just as effective. And I also like to point out, let's take a look at Phoenix Squad here. So I've seen for myself a lot of actual Jedi squads where they have integrated Ezra Bridger into that squad to pretty good effect. And I'm not saying it's always going to be the best choice, but it is an option. And he does work with that Jedi tag and all those Jedi abilities. That's just another option. He was designed for Phoenix Squad as the obvious choice, but you do have that option of using him with other Jedi. And you know what, Kanan, he also has that option. I don't think he's as effective of a tank outside of Phoenix Squad personally, but you know what, if you can find a squad that he fits in with and works with, more power to you. That's the whole point of this video and a major point of this game. So hopefully these examples give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, and these are just one or two examples. There are so many possibilities here. And you know, let's go ahead and take a look at one more example here. So if we take a look at Mon Mothma, we'll take a look at her Restore Our Republic ability. She can revive a random rebel fighter every 5 turns with that 5 cooldown. Now, in and of itself, that's a great ability, but if we take a look at 3 Baka here, he's a rebel. He does not have that rebel fighter tag. Now, I wish I could take credit for this, but I can't. I think I heard this on Cubs Fan Han or something, and I think he got it from somebody else. I wish I could remember who it was, but they made a point that with Chewbacca's abilities, under I Must Tell the Others, if they were defeated, 3PO and Chewie are revived with 50% health and protection whenever another rebel ally is revived. That includes the rebel fighters, because the rebel fighters are also rebels. For example, Wedge Antilles, he's a rebel and a rebel fighter. So when Mon Mothma's ability revives any rebel fighters, it will also revive 3 Baka, because the rebel fighters also have the rebel tag, which are 2 distinct tags. This is another good example of theory crafting, and this is on purpose by CG. It's actually built into the game. So top 10 lists are great to give you a guiding point to shoot for when you're building up your squads over the long term, but keep something in mind here, folks. A lot of those top 10 lists are, well, they generally apply to the whale end of the player spectrum. If you're at that top end of the player community within Galaxy of Heroes, you've got a heavy roster, a lot of Gear 12 relic characters, and at some point you reach it's called the point of diminishing returns. And with these types of games, when you hit that top level of the game, especially if you're a whale or a kraken and you're just pouring all kinds of money into it and you're just building up your roster as fast as you can, and you're grabbing all of those brand new characters, and you're getting into max rank, max geared, lickety split. One of the problems with being a whale is that you build up your roster so fast that you don't leave yourself any room to have fun with them. When you hit that top level of the player spectrum, it becomes less about theory crafting and more about which squads are specifically gonna counter these other squads, because everybody's at their max ability. At least from these videos that I've seen from these whales and whatnot, it really doesn't seem to have a whole lot of wiggle room for that theory crafting. Now, the vast majority of players are going to be lower to mid, pushing up into that upper level. That is the benefit to not being a whale, is that you and me, we have the ability to theory craft with different characters, because our opponents are not necessarily going to have these top tier characters maxed out, to the full limit. And that's something to keep in mind as you're building up your roster. You do have some wiggle room there. You're not going to have access to a lot of these upper tier characters. You'll want to make a plan which characters you want to shoot for first. Start building up your roster towards those characters, with the caveat that you might not have some of these top tier characters. So some of these characters that you're building up, they might not be super useful at the very end game, but at the level you're at, they're gonna be useful for you. And also keep something else in mind when you do hit that end game. One of the problems I'm having with Grand Arena is my GP blow. Now, that is something to keep in mind as you're building up these characters and whatnot. Even if you're not going exactly, say, full Geo or something like that, you do still need to keep your GP blow in consideration. Don't level up every single character willy-nilly. That's not what I'm saying here. That's not what I'm saying at all. You still want to be thoughtful when it comes to the characters that you're building up. You do have that wiggle room, but don't sit there. Let me give you a couple examples here. You got Cup, you got Rose Tico, stuff like that. My advice is just leave them be. Don't ever mess with them. There are certain characters that are pretty much completely useless, even as like a cleanup squad. They're just not worth it, plain and simple. So you want to balance it between a very narrow top 10 and the broader range of the game. So there is some space in between there that you have to work with. Because like with Grand Arena, I do have some GP blow that I'm trying to overcome. There are a few characters that I wish I had not leveled up, had not geared up. However, if I knew then what I knew now and had not used those resources on those characters, there are other characters that I have that I could have built up more. Because one of the problems that I'm having when I go into a Grand Arena, especially after the first round, and I'm going up against stronger rosters, stronger players, my biggest issue right now is not having the cleanup squads that I need. I'll be able to do a lot of damage and whatnot, but if my opponent has a strong roster and knows how to deploy their characters, especially if they have a solid grasp on theory crafting, there are times when I can come in strong and hard and do a lot of damage, wipe out a lot of their squads, but then I get stuck. I don't have that secondary level of my roster to come in and clean things up. That is because of my GP bloat. So there's that balance there between preventing that GP bloat, but building up a solid secondary roster. And that, in large part, takes practice. If you're still new to the game and whatnot, you might want to focus on building those specific squads. But keep in mind, not all of your off-tag characters are going to be useless either. And as you get more experience with the game, you'll be able to figure out which characters are going to be useful, even outside of their tag or whatnot. You watch there's a lot of videos out there you can watch to be able to gain that kind of information, short of having that first-hand experience. It all depends on what you want to do with your game and how deep you want to get into it. If you're casual, just completely casual, but you don't want to completely suck at it, then your best bet's going to be probably going with those top 10 squads and whatnot. But if you're more into the game and more invested in it, you probably want to watch some videos, do some research, and play around with the squads that you do have. So don't be afraid to experiment. A little bit of GP blow is not going to kill you in Grand Arena. I've gone up against players with rosters that on the surface they look like there was a lot of GP bloat there. However, the characters they had were so well geared. And I'm not talking about Gear 13 and Relic. We're talking about Purple and Gear 12. They were geared right, they were modded right, and they had such a good grasp of theory crafting that they were able to deploy defenses that even though it appeared there was GP bloat, they still managed to repel my offensive squads fairly easily. It doesn't happen every day, but it has happened. So that's just another example of what I'm talking about with this video. If you don't know what you're doing, if you just want to keep it casual, that's where those top 10 lists are going to come in handy for you. But if you're looking to get more involved in the game, keep your options open. Take those top 10 lists as a guiding point, but then leave yourself wiggle room. They don't have to be an exact, rigid set of squads that you need to build up. And the Padme Journey Guide is a good example of that, because there are going to be some characters that are going to be much more difficult for you to build up as a newer player. And if you want Padme, it's perfectly okay, because you do have options. And that is one of the reasons why I don't micromanage my guild. I will offer them advice and guidance, but ultimately, there's no one way, more often than not, of going about this game. Now, there are certain elements, such as the Thrawn Journey Guide. You have to have Phoenix. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. A lot of this other stuff, you do have options. You do have wiggle room. That is what I'm trying to get you to take away from this video. I will do other top 10 guides at some point when I have the time to be able to get to them. And believe me, I'm trying. I just got so much going on, you don't even know. But I will get to it. So this is my first example, my first video on top 10 lists. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying don't pay attention to them. I'm not saying don't use them. They are useful, but they are not everything within the game. And that's all I'm trying to get across. Don't get caught up in these top 10 lists, because the vast majority of you are not going to be at that level anytime soon, if ever. The vast majority of players are not whales. The top 10 lists are great as a guiding point, but for most of us, we do have other options. So that's just stuff to keep in mind as you're building your roster. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful for you, and I will be putting together some legitimate top 10 lists here, hopefully in the not too distant future. If you did enjoy it, take a moment to hit that like button. It really does help out the channel. And with that said, I'll see you in the Cantina, Recruit. This is Rebel Squadron out.
Combat Recon deactivated.